So I got to play Gotham Knights early. The developers let me play about 2 hours of like a work in progress version. And as you guys know here, I don't usually do like preview type videos. I like to kind of just judge the game when it's out, when I can play the entire thing. And I will admit that playing 2 hours of this, it's not enough to really make a full judgment call. But number one, I'm like a diehard Bat fan, as you guys probably know. But number two, I just had a lot of questions about this game. The gameplay videos that came out, I wasn't quite sure about a lot of it, and I just really wanted to know. So I did jump in. I've got some gameplay for you guys here, as you can see, and I'm going to try and talk about it as much as I can. So please know this isn't definitive. If you hear me going kind of wishy-washy back and forth how I feel about things, I'm still working this out. I'm just reacting to the small bits that I did get to play. But hopefully if you're like me and you have a couple of questions about the game, maybe I can help out. So what I did here was I was able to play as whoever I wanted, and I stuck mostly with Batgirl and Nightwing. Those are just my favorites. I definitely recommend checking out some other YouTubers or websites out there, because other people probably played other ones, but that's mostly who I stuck with, and I got to kind of experience a little different chunks of the game. A boss battle, a little bit of open world stuff, and some story stuff. The big question, the one that's on everybody's mind, is the combat, right? So the combat is, everybody's gonna compare it to Arkham, and as you can see from some of the videos or the previews and stuff that have come out, it's not Arkham. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It can totally stand out on its own. And it sort of does. The combat is, like a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, I'm a little 50-50 on. I can't quite put my finger on it. So the combat, you do have enemies that attack you, and there is a button to react, and there's a timing window. I'm not going to compare it to the Arkham games the whole time, I promise, because this is a different game. And instead of like a counter type block thing, it is a dodge. So if you time it right and you press it just at the right time, you'll get a perfect dodge that then opens up a kind of counterattack for you to hit an enemy with. If you miss that window, your character just dodges. So, it's really kind of like a little squirrely. You're kind of always just flinging around. But what works about that, at least specifically for me personally with Nightwing, is that he just looks really cool. It's not like I've played a lot. I feel like I haven't played a lot of games where like you're playing as an actual gymnast, or the game at least has animations that are modeled after like real gymnastics. So to see Dick doing like these really cool flips and like round-offs and all these whoop-de-doos and everything in mid-combat is very cool. Now, what you're actually doing is hitting in a couple of different ways. There's a heavy attack and a light attack, and you can combine those a little bit. And then there's like you hold a button down and activate certain abilities that then have a cooldown. The cooldown is essentially built up by gaining momentum or just fighting and progressing. And the moves kind of vary. Some of them work as kind of AoE effects or interrupts to certain characters. Heavy attacks, when they'll come at you and you see red, you can use a certain attack to interrupt them. They cause different types of damage, little types of, little RPG elements there, but also there are buffs and stuff. Like Barbara actually works with like these little drones that can buff you, and if you're playing with someone else, they'll buff someone else. Now, I played by myself, and it was mostly fine. I'll get to that in a little bit, but there's the cooldown abilities, and then there's little extra abilities that you'll be able to get through upgrading yourself, which I'll get to in a little bit as well. But I found with the combat that it's definitely not bad. There are moments of it that are really satisfying, especially when you're fighting against a lot of enemies. You can use the environment a little bit. The heavier enemies take a special hit. I do feel like it could get boring after a while. Then again, I didn't get through the entire skill tree. I was able to add some stuff on, but I'm not sure how much steam it's really going to truly have. It still feels somewhat simple, and that's despite the hits and the impact being fairly satisfying. The finishers and like the last enemy at the stage gets that slow motion hit. They're incredibly well done and really, really like legit thrilling to see. But I need to spend more time on the game before I like really make a judgment call on it. Now, there's a lot more going on with the game, specifically the way it's kind of structured. So it's like a day-night thing, but not really. So you go out at night, you go on patrol, you go out, look for crimes, or you pursue your main missions, get clues and stuff like that. And then every time you decide to turn in, you go back to the Belfry, and then you've probably read about they've been upfront about this already, but you go back to the Belfry, and that's where like you kind of cash in your earned points, and that's where you spend on a skill tree, swap out your outfits for different like RPG attributes and stuff like that. And I will say the skill tree, at least what I saw for Dick and Barb, are pretty good. Like there's health upgrades, there's upgrades to your abilities, things that make them significant. You have to unlock. The unlocks kind of start off as basic core things that like you kind of need then to kind of, you know, building onto weirder, wilder things and just adding different attributes to existing attacks or stuff like that. But it seemed like a pretty good system. One thing I did unlock that I liked that kind of added to everything was a grappling hook pull for Barbara, where she can pull an enemy towards her in combat, you know, like a similar game. But that was done with the right trigger. So it kind of added on that little combat that's just kind of heavy attack, light attack, cooldown thing. So I'm hoping that's where stuff can really be filled out and become a little bit more creative and a little bit more in-depth and not get old super quick. And I do like the whole coming back to the Belfry thing. That loop seems like it could be pretty cool. You come back, you look at your clues, you're trying to figure out like all this stuff going on in Gotham since Bruce Wayne is dead. He left a lot of like unfinished work, it seems. You're looking at your list of subquests, you're looking at things you're tracking down. Like there's a lot of video gamey shit to it, and I'd say almost maybe too much. And I think this is where people were like, oh, is this a games as a service live service game? It's technically not. You can play cooperatively with a friend, but like it does have a lot of like video game stuff. Like all of the stuff, all the different stats you have for your costumes and all these numbers that like I couldn't find myself super caring about, at least in my 2 hours or so. That'll probably change once you get closer to the end of the game, of course, but I'm really there for like the Batman action and not just going through menus and tracking quests and subquests and turning in quests and like challenges and shit like that, you know? I really wasn't into like the sub challenges I equipped and did and tracked out and like went out into the open world and did, because they were kind of just like random events in the world, and I don't know, they seem kind of dull. So a lot of the things are like a bomb defusal or hostage rescue type situation where it shows that the stealth in the game doesn't seem like it's that great. And this is where it feels like it's just like stuff plopped in an open world where you might be co-oping with a friend. So the actual elements there are pretty simplistic, where it's just enemies standing around and you can kind of distract them, but ultimately it's just a matter of walking up behind them and choking them out, which the choking animations and the sneak attack animations are very, very cool. Like cool to the point like where, you know, in The Last of Us, when you choke a dude out, you turn the camera around to like see it. I definitely did that in this game because some of the like Nightwing, like with his weapons, the way he does it, it's cool, but it just felt really simplistic and not very satisfying. The enemies are like super duper dumb. There's like a little sight detection meter, but that's really it. It doesn't feel like previous Batman games. It doesn't feel solid enough for a stealth game. It doesn't quite even feel as solid as like an open world game with some stealth elements. It was just kind of there. Granted, again, I want to disclaim that I didn't play the finished version of the game. There could be more to it, but I was not really impressed from that aspect. Riding around on a bat cycle around the city is cool. There's like a wheelie button, and like you can kind of like boom over objects and stuff, and like you can drift and do all this stuff, and the city looks incredible. Like this is where I'm like a bat person. Like the history behind the city and the fact that they're actually playing into some of that stuff, and the districts feel really, really unique and distinct, and there's this really good mood and atmosphere over everything. It was really working for me. The problem is that the city was like a ghost town. Now, there was just not a lot going on. There's some pedestrians, there's the occasional car, but like it just really wasn't doing anything for me. I don't necessarily know like what I would want in the city to just make it feel more, you know, like I don't make the games, but like something about it just didn't feel quite right. That being said, like when you're like grappling up to a rooftop and you're looking out over the city and you hear the distant sirens and this like low roar of music, it's cool. It's that Batman feeling I was hoping for, and I definitely got that. Nightwing's Fortnite-esque glider is fine. You actually can pretty much just go with it. You don't really necessarily drop and lose altitude that quickly. You can kind of cruise around with it, which is pretty interesting. But I found myself not wanting to do that. I wanted to run and jump from rooftop to rooftop and use a grappling hook like a good old-fashioned bat person would. But I'm curious to see what else there is to find and do, because like you can find crates that just like pop and don't really give you anything exciting, just kind of more shit for sub-menus. And that's where it kind of felt like just a games as a service-y type thing. Like I was like, I don't care about these numbers. Give me something cool, man, or give me something else to do. But it might sound like I'm kind of like negative, but what I think they do have going for them is just kind of like a good old-fashioned like just comic book ass video game where you play it, there's boss battles, there's some story. The story I did get to see, and I won't spoil anything, of course, the story I did get to see was pretty cool. Actually, a little better than I expected. You know, I still think Jason Todd looks kind of funny, but like what I got to see, and specifically spending a lot of time in the open world with Dick and Barbara, like I got to see a little bit of their character, a little bit more of their voice acting, and I was into it, specifically Dick as Nightwing. Like, it was convincing, and it was pretty much what I wanted to see. They're dealing with your typical Batman story characters doing their thing, but they also look incredibly cool. I actually found myself just like really into looking at all the details for the characters like constantly. Like, I know that sounds like ridiculous, but like anytime it was raining and you see the rain dripping down the little accents in their armor and like equipping the different costumes and skins and looking at them, like I was into that. But like just what I was saying with the whole like bat thing, like I was curious to see where the story was going to go. For me, it teased a lot of interesting things that we haven't seen yet that I think could be pretty cool as someone who just loves all the comic books. I think the boss battles are going to be pretty cool. I only got to do one with Harley Quinn, and it was pretty lengthy and actually, you know, somewhat challenging. And it was like a regular old-fashioned boss battle. And you know what? I like those sometimes. It was a little repetitive, yeah, but like it had like a cinematic element to it. It had some cool music. The game has lots of cool moments. Like it had a couple of cinematic moments where like a real song would kick in, and it was pretty satisfying. But like the Harley Quinn boss battle was pretty over the top and crazy, like I was hoping. So I'm seeing that they laid out like, you know, Mr. Freeze and like all these people in the trailers and stuff like that. I'm really hoping that like the cool boss battles are like the big foundation points here for like all the chaos, because like getting to the bosses, sometimes you just like fight or sneak through these dumb enemies, and it's like, it's okay, but you know, it's not like other comic book games we've really played. It's not as compelling, but the boss battle, at least the one I played, I did really like. You can tell I'm going back and forth here. I'm pointing out things I like and things I didn't like, but ultimately, like I say on this channel, like I talk about what I like, and with this game, I did still find myself wanting to play more. Like I still wanted to see what was up. I wanted to flesh out my abilities more. I wanted to see more of what was going on in the world. I actually really wanted to see where the story would go, which for me, as like that type of player, a single player story player, is big. I want to engage in more boss battles. I want to unlock more vehicles and things to do in the open world, and ultimately just see what the deal is with the game. So the fact that I am critical of elements of it, but left still wanting to see more, I think is an okay sign. Because I got like full transparency, like I do want this game to be really good. I hope I really like this game, but we won't have to wait too much longer to see. So I definitely want to know what you guys are thinking with this. And of course, just know that like when the game does come out, I'm going to do like a full video on that on here, probably End Game Ranks, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But I definitely want to know what you think of what you've heard about previews, if you've watched mine or another YouTuber's or read one online. What are you thinking now that we're getting closer to release? And also, like, what are your big expectations for the game? Who do you want to play as? Do you have any questions for me? I'll try to answer what I can down in the comments. Again, like I said, I only played for 2 hours, so some stuff is limited, but that's about where I'm at. So again, don't take it as gospel. Could be subject to change, but thank you for listening to me ramble about Gotham Knights for this long. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.